A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
By the way, also, you guys, some interesting news. This is Elon Musk just tweeting out a little bit ago on X, of course, which he owns, saying that he's not the author of this new proposal. And he's giving big credit to President Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, also Speaker Johnson. And he also says that the second version, this Plan B, which we'll see if it goes through or not, he says is a much better bill that is closer to being a real continuing resolution, but with support also for hurricane victims and still the disaster relief, which, of course, the people in North Carolina and elsewhere deserve.
The imprimatur of the White House.
Yes, yes.
The real White House.
Yeah, exactly, the real White House. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep everybody posted to see if this new Plan B passes or not. Joining us now to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff is Victoria Coates, former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump. Victoria, first of all, your thoughts about all the stuff that's happening on Capitol Hill, and clearly President Trump is essentially the de facto president.
Oh, absolutely. And I did just escape from D.C., which I'm very happy to have done, get out of the swamp for the holidays. But, you know, there's, I think, rightly conservatives and the president rejected the 1,500-page monstrosity that was the original CR. You know, there's horse trading and wrangling over what's going to be the skinny down version. But the last thing I saw was 115 pages. So it was literally decimated. It was 1/10 of what it was. And so that's a really good start. I have some questions about the debt ceiling and what we want to do with it and what the president-elect wants out of that and how we can get the cuts we need. But I think we're on a really good path.
You know, Victoria Coates, I wanted to ask you this before we move on to some international news, that the FAA is banning these drones over New Jersey, threatening, quote, deadly force for an imminent security threat if they fly over certain locations in New Jersey. They still are saying they don't know what we're talking about. The Biden administration still says we don't know what it is. There's still a whole bunch that they have not identified. Trust us, is the famous line from Mayorkas, and he did such a great job on the border. Of course, we can't forget that. But how concerned should we be? You know, when you hear this stuff and then you hear people talk about even loose nukes and some, you know, whistleblowers coming out with some really kind of disconcerting information for residents.
You know, between you guys in New York and me in Philadelphia, I mean, I think we all have to be concerned because we've gone from Admiral Kirby telling us these were lawful fixed-wing aircrafts that we couldn't trust our lying eyes to all of a sudden we're going to shoot these things down and it's an imminent national security threat. They're making this problem worse by the way they're handling it. Just tell us what it is. And, you know, clearly this is going to come out in dribs and drabs. It is shades of the Chinese spy balloon. And I just, you know, it's ridiculous to make people more nervous and more inclined to believe extreme theories, you know, instead of just telling us the truth.
Yeah, exactly. And
so, Victoria, to switch to international things, the Russians are moving their equipment out of Syria into Libya, where the last I left it, they were at a deadlock with Turkey that, in fact, had pushed them out of a major city, and President Sisi of Egypt got involved. What's the situation that's going on that the Russians are moving their equipment into Libya?
Yeah, this is really, really murky. And what the Libyans I talked to have pushed back and said that they are rejecting the Russian advances to try to get into their ports. It would be, I think, from a U.S. perspective, even less desirable to have them in Libya than it was to have them in Syria, because, you know, that's right up against, you're then looking at the coasts of Spain, France, and Italy, not just the Eastern Mediterranean. So I think this is something we have to watch super, super closely. And there is a strong Turkish presence in Libya as well, so that could be a point of friction. And so what's coming out of Syria is not staying in Syria.
You know, explain, Victoria, to everybody, because Turkey is NATO. That's why this gets so complicated.
No, and Turkey is a fellow NATO member. A lot of people have asked me, why don't we expel Turkey from NATO? There is no mechanism for that in the NATO charter. Once you become a member, the only way to get out of it is for you to withdraw, not for the other states to kick you out. So that is a fact that we all have to deal with. Turkey also has the largest army in Europe, given how the atrophy to the French and the German armies, amongst others. So, they are, as I said, a fact to be dealt with. And the fact that the United States under President Obama decided to back the SDF Syrians, who President Erdogan of Turkey considers terrorists. We do not consider them terrorists. We consider them counter-ISIS partners. But the fact that Turkey does, it always made that policy, it inherently have failure baked into it, because at some point the Turks were going to take an action like this. And finally they have in the waning days of the Biden administration, when they think there's weakness in Washington before President Trump comes back, and they're trying to gain an advantage. And as you said, it becomes a really intractable problem.
Judge Weinberg.
Victoria, good to talk to you again. I'll tell you what concerns me. Erdogan has really declared war against the Kurds, not just the so-called terrorists, but against the Kurdish people and their ambitions. And if he goes after the Kurds, you also have a whole big population of Christians in Syria. And the Israelis are very, very close to the Kurds. So if they start going after the Kurds, what is Israel going to do? Just stand idly by and let them exterminate the Kurdish population? That really becomes a problem. So then you have a so-called NATO country against a real ally, Israel. How do you sort that out, Victoria?
Well, it's going to be nothing but a headache, Judge. And I had a meeting with the Armenian ambassador recently about the Armenian Christian community in Aleppo, which is one of the most ancient Christian communities. And we have the Druze population as well. And what disturbed me most was the HTS folk, the Turkish-backed group, when they announced their governing slate of so-called technocrats. They were all ISIS and Al-Qaeda alums, not a single Christian, not a single Druze, let alone a Jew or a woman on the slate. This doesn't look terribly inclusive to me. So wow. I think we all have to watch this very closely.
Absolutely. Victoria, keep us posted. There are so many complexities there. And it's a very dangerous, the powder keg in many ways, with all the different tribes there especially. Thank you so much, Victoria.
And Merry Christmas, Victoria.
Thank you, Victoria.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah, everyone.